Have you ever read one of those short stories that has the perfect setup and you love it and you love these characters and you can't
Yep.
wait to see where it's going to go? And then it fizzles and the ending comes and you're like, oh, I'm not very satisfied with that. That kind of
Or it
sucked.
just stays in the beginning like forever and ever and ever. And you're like, but you have to go somewhere. And it's like the whole short story is just the setup and then it's over.
Yes.
Oh.
Or it's 100% dialogue and you're like, are you sitting? Are you standing? Are there clothes involved? I mean, what is
Wait, that
happening?
made me want to read it. And today we're going to give you 10 ways to write a killer short story. So we want to read it too. Clothes on or clothes off? Let's find out.
My clothes or the character's clothes?
Well, stay tuned. We don't know what's going to be happening tonight.
I think before we get started, Morgan, you want to tell them why are we talking about this? Why is this important to us right now?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much because we are hosting our annual scary story contest. Once a year, we bring to you all the spooks, all the scares, all the blood and gore, where you get to write in to our scary story contest, and we provide you with a reading of your story on our YouTube channel, if you win, of course, and also some gift cards. So it gives you the opportunity to have bragging rights and a little booty all in one. So hopefully you'll enter our scary story contest, which you can find at nobadbookspress.com. To get your scary story ready to win our contest, so we can read it right here on our YouTube channel, we have some other upcoming videos. This one is going to be about 10 tips to writing that killer story. And then next week, we're going to have bleeding the fluff out of your story to get it tight, concise, and make sure it hits all those beats. And we'll have submitting your story for a live critique so we can get the first page ready to shine. Hopefully you'll get selected. And you have to be right here on our channel live to get selected, which is going to make it more fun, right? I'm really excited to see how many we can get through, hopefully a lot. Have our feature author for the month, which is Teresa Halverson, our very own, and she's going to talk all about hooker ghosts or ghost hookers. Who can be sure?
Who knows? It's going to
I
be
guess
fun.
we're going to find out more.
Fun, scary, and scandalous. And then on the 30th, we are going to announce the winners, and it's going to be absolutely tantalizing. Okay, our first tip to writing a killer short story is to make sure you start with a strong idea. Your idea should be concise, specific, and it should focus on a single event, emotion, setting, or character to drive this narrative forward. So you want to make sure that you're starting with something that's original. Do not have your character wake up from a nap because this is done so much. And we know it can be pulled off in novels, but to do it in short stories really falls into like the trope and makes it difficult to overcome in such a few amount of pages. So avoid things that you've seen done over and over and over again and start with an idea. It gets us right into the action, right with the character. It has a strong emotion so that it's something we haven't read a lot and we're interested to see more.
That's a good one. I like it. All right, ready for the next one?
Tell us the next one.
Okay, next one is we're going to want to keep our characters to a minimum. Every single character you introduce needs an introduction and a quick description. You have to spend time on the dialogue, explaining what they're doing, and all that adds to your word count. So if you're doing a short story like The Sages, like the one that we're hosting currently, and you only have 500 words, you can't introduce 5, 6, 7, 10 characters. You just can't. Ideally, 2 is good, 1 is good, maybe 3, but you're going to have to really write a concise story for 3. So keep those characters to a minimum.
That's not a do not, it's just a beware.
Exactly.
Ooh. I think the reason, just for reference, the reason why this is a beware is because if you put too many characters in, like Teresa says, you don't have this space to expand on them. So there's a danger that they feel flat. They feel non-dimensional. You don't know anything about them. You don't know any background. You don't know what they look like. You don't know how they feel, anything like that. And it just feels flat. 3. This one is one that it sounds obvious, but we see it missing in short stories all the time. And that is your story should have a theme or a message or something that coherently ties the beginning of the story to the end of your story. Why are you writing this? What is the point? What are you getting across to your readers? You know, it doesn't have to hit somebody over the head. It can be subtle, but really making sure your story feels cohesive with a theme or a message, however you want to say that, is really important.
And I'll tell you, as one of the judges, I am a sucker for mirroring, which is when your opening
Yes.
scene and your end scene either reflect each other exactly or have some kind of loop feel with setting or character dialogue so that we can see that intentional kind of arc. So bonus points if you can use mirroring.
And that's a great tip for a short story because you can really hone in on it because you have such little amount of words. So nice job. I like that one.
4 is obvious. It's create tension and conflict early on. And obviously, if you can do this in your first line, you usually have us hooked. So we're looking for a mystery, something that causes us to have a question in our minds, like, "Ooh, I have to know what happened to the body," or "Why am I burying it this place?" Or "Oh my gosh, what is that book they just found?" So whatever it is, give us conflict or tension, two people fighting, somebody hiding a secret, something in the very beginning of your story that gets us to emotionally care. You have so few words that getting that tension higher in the story will really create buy-in and help you stand out to win this contest.
Next one. We've got use strong imagery and details. This again goes back to the word count. If you can, and this is a wonderful suggestion that Molly uses, don't say they ate food, say they ate Cheetos. Every single word matters. So use all of the senses and use as much description and honing in on the details as you can.
Yeah, saying they ate Cheetos with a fork or they licked the dust off of the package creates two really different images about a character, and like the way they ate their food, something that's simple, or the way that they dispose of garbage can say so much about a character without having to be explicit. That's kind of nice because it can build in that subtlety. So English teachers out there, we always are teaching people to use the 5 senses, but anytime you can do that is so great. So love to see smells used, taste used, touch used, some of those that aren't used as much.
This is my favorite tip, so I'm really glad I got this one. But it's have a satisfying ending. We see so many short stories that just sort of they just end, right? Like the words sort of just run out and you're like, oh, that was the end. And it just kind of fizzles or just falls or just stops. And this is, I think, easier said than done sometimes, but Morgan talked about it earlier, like, right, if you mirror, that's one technique. There's techniques for structure. There's a lot of techniques in there, but you really want to make sure that your short story actually has an ending. Maybe it has a twist. Maybe it has something that ties back to that central theme that makes us feel like it's complete.
Yeah.
Now, some people say you have to have a satisfying ending. Some people like cliffhangers. What do we think is a panel? I
think
cliffhangers.
you can do good with a cliffhanger on a short story because I think that is a more acceptable ending than it would be in a novel.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think an ending is what makes me happy. Whether it's a cliffhanger, I think that's fine, or whether, like, to me, satisfying just meant like in terms of the story feels right. The story feels like it came to a conclusion that is right versus like came to a conclusion that feels out of left field, feels like, and then the bear attacked, or then aliens came and saved everything. Like, that's an ending, but it's not necessarily an ending that matches with the rest of the story, and it's an ending, but it's not satisfying.
Aliens came, kidnapped everybody, and the earth died.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a great. I read a whole short story about this girl like trying to survive alone in the wilderness, and she was on the verge of death, and then just some random man just showed up and helped her.
Exactly. That's what we
Like,
want to avoid.
maybe if we had ties to him or like there was a reason for it, or but it felt she didn't earn her ending. And for me, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, because it didn't tie into what the character wanted. So thinking about the ending, like, did the character arc? Did they either not get what they want or get what they want, but in a way that pushes that theme forward? I think that really helps.
And
Yeah.
I think the reason a lot of times I struggle a lot with endings, and I realize it's because I spend so much time on the beginning, you know, picking my word choices and being so careful and everything else. And then by the time I get to the ending, I haven't run through it as many times. And I think that's why a lot of times it can be a little choppy. So I always make sure I budget extra time. I'm going to want to do that ending a bunch of times.
Which leads us to number 7, perfect segue into ruthlessly editing. We think this one's so
Yes.
important that we're doing an entire episode on it next week, where we're going to get into ideas about how you can edit yourself and also how you can be supportive to edit friends and what we're looking for in the editing process. But something as simple as taking out filler words, for example, that is a word that can be in there a lot of times, or a lot is a word that is a filler word. If you can avoid things that are overly generic and opt for words that get you more bang for your buck in the sense that they're more visual or they create more imagery. And always when you're editing, take care to look at your verbs. Don't forget your to be verbs, your is, was, and then of course has and had are second grade verbs for a reason. So try to give us verbs that really push the story forward and give us more flavor. Don't tell us that they walked across the carpet when you can tell us that they strutted or stumbled, because it gives so much more life and intrigue to what's happening and helps us create like the image that you have in your head. We want to read that image. We don't want to have ours be too far away from that. And so I think verbs can do a lot to help with that.
And with this one, like you have to balance. You only have 500 words, 1,000 words, 2,000, whatever it is for whatever short story you're writing. So you have to be able to do this in order to do what Teresa said, using strong imagery and details. Right? If you want strong imagery and details in your story, but you still want your story to be 500 words, you're going to have to be very intelligent and edit ruthlessly and be really conscientious with exactly those tips Morgan is talking
You
about.
just made me think of Teresa's favorite word that I love. I love it when she says this. Teresa always is like intentionality. Intentionality.
I was going to use my sexy voice.
Ooh, you do it, do it, do it. I didn't mean to take away from that.
Intentionality.
Well, I think Teresa, it is a good setup for the next tip, actually.
Yeah. And the next tip we've actually mentioned it on almost every single tip. It's practice economy of language. You want to just, I mean, we've been saying this over and over and over again. Make sure your verbs matter, your description matters, and you just want to be as tight as possible.
I've got tip 9 here. So tip 9, this is an interesting one. It's hopefully going to help you when you're trying to get your story to make sense and feel cohesive. It's remember to balance your protagonist and your antagonist. So your antagonist in a short story could be a person, but also could be nature. It could be man versus self, whatever that antagonizing force is, right? Wherever that source of conflict comes from, having that balance. So Morgan had a really great tip in, I think it was tip 3 about creating tension, conflict early on. But sometimes we see in a short story that there's tension or conflict early on, and then it just disappears, right? Then it becomes the character simply opining about their day or, something like that, right? So just remembering that you start some conflict, and that has to get to the end. It has to have a satisfying ending. It has to be balanced with your other forces in your book. Or not your book, your story.
Obviously, ghosts can be the villains and then they can turn in the end. You don't have to keep this protagonist, antagonist the whole time. Your mind, we're not telling you to go for overly cliched, simplified protagonist, antagonist. We're just saying make sure the conflict exists, right? So that it's important. And you made it all the way through the video to tip number 10. So tip number 10.
Wait. Before we give them tip number 10, do we want to let them know this new thing that we're doing for the semi-sages?
We have a lot of new things we're doing. Which one?
Well, The thing that I want to remind us is I'm going to be a plug for us for a second. Stay tuned if you want to hear tip 10. It's a great tip 10. But I would also remind you all out there that if you like us, you want to support us, we're a very small channel. We're trying to do a lot with a little, and we have just started a Patreon. We would love your support out there. You can go and you can find it linked to our website, or you can search for us on Patreon. We have a couple of different tiers, and we would love the support. It helps us with maintenance. It helps us so we can give prizes for these contests. It helps us with all those kinds of things. And there are some great benefits, like having coaching sessions with us, submitting to our first page critiques, and a lot of wonderful things. So that's what I wanted to say. Please check us out. It's something new we're starting, and we love all of you out there. Thank you for supporting us.
To tip number 10, which I think is the most important tip, because if you don't, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go for it. If your main character is boring, it's game over. So the main character needs to be interesting. They need to have either something going on interesting in their life or interesting thoughts, preferably both. And something that allows us to go, oh my goodness, and connect with them in a way that we don't feel like it's trite or hackneyed or overdone.
Like the world is happening to them. They're just observing the things happening to them instead of being an active participant in their own story.
You like that or don't like that?
I don't like that.
No, why don't you like that?
Because it feels disconnected.
You want a hero, a protagonist that has a desire, an ambition, a goal. You want somebody who goes for something.
Who does something, yeah.
I think in a short story, that's super important. Yes, there are novels that can make that work and actually make that part of the story, that this character stuff just happens to them.
Especially in horror, because it's so easy to just sit back and make them passive to a haunting or to strange events. And that doesn't mean things can't happen to them. It just means they still have to have a want, and maybe that thing gets in the way of their want, and then you can achieve both. So whether it's thriller, suspense, or horror, we're looking for your short story and hoping that you get us on the edge of our seat, rooting for your main character and taking us on a ride we could never predict.
We hope we get to read all of your short stories. You'll find a link down in our description on this video to submit. We hope you stay tuned for the rest of our videos this October. Whether you want to learn about ruthlessly editing or you want to have a live critique of your story before you get it submitted, stay tuned here. Thank you for joining us today.
Submissions are due the 19th.
Oh, submissions are due.
October 19th. So make sure you go to nobadbookspress.com to check us out. And if you want help with your short story, want to meet a great writing community and hang out with the most fun people in the world, Teresa, where can they find you?
Discord. Come to our Discord. We add more people. It feels like almost every single day we have more people joining us, and it's a very active, supportive, fun community. So a lot of really talented writers out there. So come join, have fun.
But don't stay here.
Yeah, you got to go write your short story.
Go write.
Bye, everybody.